Millionaire CEO ignores a cry for help, then turns back, for one reason. He saw her on the side of the road, rain pouring, a stalled car, a woman pushing it alone, a child crying in the back seat. Marcus Hale slowed down, just long enough to see her face, long enough to hear the sound. His phone buzzed with reminders he couldn't miss, and then he drove past. The road ahead was wet and empty. No music, no calls, just the engine and the clock. 10 seconds passed, then 15. Something tightened in his chest. Not guilt, not fear, something heavier. He checked the mirror again. They were still there. At the next light, he stopped. Red reflected on the pavement. His hands stayed on the wheel. The light turned green, and he had to choose. If you believe in compassion and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one small act can change everything. Marcus Hale was on his way to the airport, headed for a meeting that could secure a $5 million contract. It wasn't just about money, it was about momentum, trust, and keeping a company stable in a fragile market. Being late wasn't an option he allowed himself to consider. His calendar was built to avoid hesitation. Pressure was familiar territory for him. He had learned how to function inside it, how to make decisions quickly, and move on without looking back. People depended on him staying focused, staying efficient, staying ahead. That mindset had shaped his life for years, and most days it worked exactly as intended. As the rain intensified, the image of the stalled car followed him in silence. He didn't replay it dramatically, he simply couldn't erase it. The child's cry wasn't loud anymore, but it lingered, sitting somewhere between thought and instinct. Marcus told himself this was normal, that moments like this passed if you didn't feed them. The traffic light ahead turned red, forcing him to stop. Cars lined up behind him, impatient and close. Marcus noticed his hands gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. He took a breath, trying to reset, trying to return to the version of himself that didn't pause. He ran through the logic quickly. Someone else would help. Roadside assistance existed for a reason. He had responsibilities that mattered too. This wasn't cruelty, it was realism. That argument had always served him well, but something felt off. Not dramatic, just wrong in a quiet way. The kind of wrong that doesn't shout, but waits. Marcus glanced at the mirror again, almost against his will, and saw the woman still there, still pushing, still checking on the child. The light stayed red longer than usual. Time stretched. The rain didn't let up. Marcus realized this wasn't about missing a flight anymore. It was about whether he could ignore what he was seeing and still recognize himself afterward. When the light finally changed, Marcus didn't move right away. The space between red and green felt heavier than it should have, and in that pause, he understood that the next few seconds were going to decide more than his schedule. Marcus turned the steering wheel before his mind could fully catch up with the motion. The car slowed, then crossed lanes carefully as rain blurred the painted lines on the road. Drivers behind him honked, some in anger, some in confusion, but he ignored all of it. His focus narrowed to one thing only: getting back to that stalled car before it was too late. He pulled in behind the sedan and stepped out into the rain without grabbing his jacket. Cold water soaked through his shirt instantly, but he barely noticed. The woman looked up, startled, her face tense as if she expected criticism instead of help. Marcus raised one hand calmly and spoke in a steady voice, telling her he could help move the car to a safer spot. For a second, she didn't answer. Her eyes flicked between Marcus and the traffic rushing past them. Then she nodded, clearly overwhelmed, but relieved. She mentioned that the engine had died without warning and that her phone battery was almost gone. Marcus listened without interrupting, already positioning himself behind the trunk. The child in the back seat had gone quiet, watching everything with wide eyes. Marcus caught a glimpse of a small face pressed against the window, cheeks flushed, eyes tired. That look hit him harder than the rain ever could. It wasn't fear anymore. It was exhaustion, the kind that comes from waiting too long for something to change. Together, Marcus and the woman pushed. The car resisted at first, heavy and stubborn, before slowly rolling forward. Their shoes slipped on the wet asphalt, muscles burning with effort. No one spoke. There was only breath, strain, and the shared goal of moving the car out of danger. Once they reached a safer stretch of shoulder, Marcus signaled for her to get inside and steer while he pushed from behind. She hesitated again, clearly unused to relying on strangers. He reassured her with a simple nod. Nothing dramatic, just steady presence. She finally climbed into the driver's seat. The car settled into place, and Marcus stepped back, chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. Rain dripped from his hair and onto the pavement. The woman rolled down the window and thanked him quietly, her voice shaking more from stress than the cold. Marcus waved it off, already pulling out his phone to call for a tow truck. As he stood there in the rain, waiting for the call to connect, Marcus felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just a detour anymore. This moment had already redirected something deeper than his schedule, and although he didn't know it yet, this single choice was about to tie his life to hers in ways neither of them could have predicted. The tow company picked up on the third ring, but the line kept cutting in and out because of the storm. Marcus stepped closer to the sedan, shielding his phone with his hand while rain ran down his knuckles. He gave the operator the mile marker, the model of the car, and a clear description of the shoulder they were on. When he ended the call, he turned and saw the woman standing very still, like she was holding herself together by force. Her name was Lauren Whitaker, and she looked like someone who hadn't slept well in a long time. Her hair was pulled back in a messy tie that had come loose from the rain, and her face had that tight, careful expression people get when they don't feel safe falling apart. She told Marcus her phone was at 3% and she'd been using it all morning to coordinate a day that already felt impossible. She didn't say the full reason yet, but her voice made it clear that being stranded wasn't just inconvenient, it was frightening. Marcus glanced into the back seat and saw the child more clearly now. A little boy, maybe 6, sitting with his backpack hugged against his chest like it was armor. His name, Lauren said softly, was Milo, and he'd been brave all day, but he was tired and confused by the sudden stop. Milo's eyes tracked Marcus with cautious curiosity, like he was trying to figure out if this stranger was real help or another disappointment. Lauren opened the driver's door and reached down near the pedals, as if she could fix the problem with her hands. She apologized again, too quickly, too many times, the way people do when they're used to being blamed for things that aren't their fault. She admitted she didn't have roadside coverage anymore, because she'd had to cut every extra bill she could. She said it like a confession, like it made her a bad person, and Marcus felt a sharp ache at how normal it sounded to her. The rain got heavier, and cars kept passing close enough to spray dirty water onto the shoulder. Lauren flinched every time a truck rushed by, then forced herself to stand tall again because Milo was watching. Marcus realized she wasn't just worried about the car, she was worried about what this delay might cost her later. He asked gently where she was headed, and for the first time her eyes filled, not with drama, but with a quiet panic she didn't know how to hide. She told him she was trying to make it to a pediatric clinic across town because Milo had an appointment she'd waited months to get. She said the last time they missed one, the next opening wasn't for weeks, and weeks mattered right now. She didn't explain the medical details, and she didn't have to, because the fear in her voice said enough. Marcus saw her swallow hard, then look away like she didn't want a stranger to see how close she was to breaking. Marcus offered his umbrella, and she shook her head at first, instinctively refusing anything that felt like charity. So he didn't push it on her as a gift. He just held it in a way that covered Milo when Lauren opened the back door to check on him. Milo leaned forward, still clutching his backpack, and Lauren's hand trembled as she brushed rain off his forehead. In that small movement, Marcus recognized something he couldn't ignore. This wasn't a problem to solve quickly. It was a life that had been running on empty for a long time. Lauren's phone buzzed once, and then went dark. Battery finally gone, and her shoulders dropped like she'd lost her last lifeline. She stared at the black screen for a second, then forced a thin smile at Milo and told him everything was fine. Marcus watched her perform calm for her child, and it hit him how alone she really was in that moment. He asked if there was anyone she could call from his phone, and she hesitated before quietly admitting there wasn't, not nearby, not anymore. The tow truck was still 20 minutes out, and Lauren looked like 20 minutes might as well be forever. Marcus could have left after making the call, because technically he'd done enough, and no one would blame him for returning to his day. But he stayed, standing in the rain beside a woman who didn't have a safety net, beside a child who didn't understand why grown-ups look scared. And as Marcus looked at the highway and then back at them, he realized he was about to make a second choice, one that would cost him more than time. Marcus didn't ask about the medical details, because he could tell Lauren was already carrying more than she could name out loud. Instead, he asked one simple question that didn't feel like an interrogation, just a door cracked open. He asked what the appointment was for, and whether missing it would set them back again. Lauren stared at the highway for a moment, then let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for weeks. She explained that Milo had been having episodes at school, moments where his body would go stiff and his eyes would glaze over, and the teachers would panic because they didn't know what they were seeing. Most days he was fine, bright and funny and full of questions. But then there were these sudden, terrifying minutes that left him exhausted afterward. Lauren had taken him to urgent care twice, but each time they were told to follow up somewhere else. Schedule something else. Wait for someone else. Waiting had become the story of her life. Marcus listened, and what surprised him wasn't the situation. It was how calmly Lauren described it, like she had trained herself to sound steady no matter what. She said she'd stopped telling most people the truth because they always reacted with pity or advice, and she didn't have the energy to manage their feelings on top of her own. She gave a small, tired half-smile and admitted she'd learned to keep it simple for Milo, too. She told him they were just doing checkups, because calling it anything scarier made Milo start asking questions she couldn't answer. Then Lauren said something that shifted the ground under Marcus. She admitted that the clinic wasn't just across town. It was the only place that would see Milo quickly because it was tied to a community program, and she only qualified after someone vouched for her. That voucher had come from a woman at Milo's school, a counselor who had pushed paperwork through late at night to help them. Lauren said she felt embarrassed needing that kind of help, but she also felt grateful in a way that made her chest hurt. She was trying to honor that help by showing up, by not wasting the chance she'd been given. Marcus glanced at Milo, who was now watching raindrops race down the window like it was a game. Milo didn't look sick in that moment. He looked like a kid who wanted to be anywhere else but stuck on the side of a highway. Marcus felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak, because he realized how easy it was for the world to miss a child like that. A kid who could smile one minute and scare everyone the next, and a mother who had to hold both realities at the same time. Lauren's voice softened, and she said the hardest part wasn't the appointments or the bills. It was the constant fear of being judged as a bad mother. She said people looked at her car, her tired face, her secondhand clothes, and they assumed the worst. She said she'd stopped asking anyone for rides after one woman at work laughed and told her she should get her life together. Lauren didn't sound angry when she said it, just resigned, like she'd accepted that shame was the price of survival. Marcus felt his throat tighten because he recognized that resignation, not from poverty, but from another kind of loneliness he didn't talk about. He'd grown up watching his own mother pretend everything was fine while she worked 2 jobs and never complained, and he'd sworn he'd escaped that life. Somewhere along the way, escape had turned into armor, and that armor had turned into distance from anyone who needed something. Hearing Lauren speak pulled at an old memory he'd kept locked up, the memory of a woman who never asked for help until it was too late. When the tow truck finally appeared in the distance, its lights flashing through the rain, Lauren wiped her face quickly, like she was ashamed of having shown even a crack. Marcus didn't comment on it. He just stepped closer and told her the truth in the simplest way possible, that she didn't do anything wrong, and that she wasn't alone right now. Lauren looked at him, startled by how steady his voice was, and for the first time her expression softened into something like trust. The driver confirmed the car needed a quick tow to a nearby shop, not a long repair on the shoulder. Lauren asked how long it might take, and the driver shrugged in a way that didn't offer comfort. Lauren's shoulders sank again, because every delay meant losing the appointment, losing the voucher, losing the one thin thread she'd managed to hold on to. Marcus glanced toward the highway exit, then back to Milo, and in that moment he realized the real decision wasn't whether he'd stopped. The real decision was what he was willing to sacrifice next. Marcus looked at the time and felt the familiar instinct to protect his schedule at all costs. But this time he didn't obey it. He asked Lauren where the clinic was, and how long it would take to get there if they left right now. Lauren hesitated, clearly unsure if she should accept anything more from a stranger, then gave him the address from memory because her phone was dead. Marcus typed it into his navigation and saw the estimate. It was tight, but it was possible, if they moved fast. He told her he could drive them, that the tow truck could take the car to the shop and she could handle it later. But the appointment couldn't be replaced easily. Lauren's first reaction was a hard no, the kind that comes from fear, not pride, and Marcus recognized it instantly. He didn't argue with her or try to charm her into it. He simply explained the logic and let her make the choice, because kindness without respect isn't kindness at all. Milo looked between them, silent and alert, like he could feel the tension in the air. Lauren finally asked a question that sounded small but carried a whole life inside it. She asked why Marcus was doing this, why he'd even turned back. Marcus didn't have a perfect answer, and he refused to make one up. He said he didn't know exactly, but he knew what it felt like to be left on the side of the road, and he didn't want that for her or for Milo. Lauren's eyes held his for a long second, and something in her face shifted, like she was deciding whether trust was worth the risk. They moved quickly. The tow driver hooked the sedan while Marcus guided Lauren and Milo toward his SUV. He opened the back door first so Milo could climb in without feeling trapped. Then he handed Milo a clean towel from the trunk. Milo took it cautiously, then wrapped it around his shoulders like a cape. Lauren watched that tiny moment with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes because she was still trying to protect herself from hoping too much. As Marcus pulled onto the road, the rain eased just enough to see clearly, and the city came back into focus. He drove with steady control, not rushing recklessly, but not wasting a second either. Lauren sat in the passenger seat with her hands clasped in her lap, fighting the urge to apologize again. Marcus told her she didn't need to keep saying sorry, and she let out a breath that sounded like relief, mixed with disbelief. Milo asked if they were going to the doctor now, and Lauren answered softly that they were, because a man had decided to help. Halfway there, Marcus's phone started buzzing nonstop. His assistant was calling again, then texting, then calling. Marcus glanced at the screen and felt the weight of what he was about to lose. If he missed the flight, he might lose the meeting. And if he lost the meeting, he might lose the contract. That contract meant jobs, growth, security, the kind of stability he'd built his whole identity around. He turned the phone face down without answering, and in that act he felt both fear and clarity, like he was stepping off a cliff he'd been standing on for years. Lauren noticed the phone and understood instantly that Marcus was giving up something important. She asked him, very carefully, if he was sure about this. Marcus kept his eyes on the road and said yes, because some moments don't come with a redo. Lauren's throat worked like she was trying not to cry, and she turned toward the window to hide it. Milo, still wrapped in the towel, leaned forward and asked if Marcus was a firefighter or a police officer, because only those people helped like this in his mind. Marcus smiled, told him he was just a guy driving a car, and Milo nodded like that answer mattered more than any title. When they reached the clinic, Lauren jumped out before Marcus even found a spot, urgency pushing her forward. Marcus parked and followed with Milo, holding the door and guiding them through the rain into a bright waiting room that smelled like disinfectant and coffee. Lauren rushed to the front desk, explaining what happened, begging them not to cancel, and the receptionist looked unsure. Then an older nurse stepped out, recognized Milo's name, and waved them through with a firm, kind nod. Marcus watched Lauren's shoulders drop for the first time all day, and he realized that getting them here wasn't the end of the problem. It was the beginning of something much bigger he had just stepped into. Marcus stayed in the waiting room at first, sitting a few chairs away while Lauren filled out forms with shaking hands. The clinic felt warm and strangely calm compared to the chaos outside, and that contrast made everything sink in at once. Lauren kept glancing up at him as if she expected him to disappear, and each time he met her eyes and nodded, reminding her he was still there. Milo sat between them, swinging his legs slowly, the towel now folded neatly on his lap like something precious. When the nurse called Milo's name, Lauren froze for half a second, fear tightening her posture before she moved. Marcus noticed it and stood up immediately, not to take over, but to walk beside them. He asked Lauren quietly if she wanted him to stay or wait, making sure the choice was hers. Lauren looked at Milo, then back at Marcus, and after a brief pause she said, yes, that she wanted him there, at least until they knew more. That small request felt heavier than any contract Marcus had ever signed. Inside the exam room, the doctor spoke gently, explaining each step before touching Milo, making sure he felt safe. Marcus stayed back, leaning against the wall, watching Lauren try to stay composed while her eyes followed every movement. Milo answered questions bravely, cracking a small joke at one point that made the nurse smile. Marcus felt something tighten again in his chest, but this time it wasn't discomfort. It was connection, the kind that grows quietly without asking permission. As the doctor stepped out to review notes, Lauren finally let her guard drop just enough to speak honestly. She admitted she'd been terrified that day would never come, that they'd keep missing chances and falling further behind. She said she'd told herself not to expect help, because expecting help made disappointment hurt more. Marcus listened without interrupting, realizing how carefully she'd built her world to survive without support. He didn't rush to reassure her, because he understood that sometimes presence mattered more than words. Lauren asked Marcus about his life then, not out of curiosity, but out of balance, like she needed to know who was standing beside her. Marcus gave her the simplest version of the truth, that he ran a company, traveled a lot, and spent most of his time making